Why does hope become hidden? When hope has become buried over time, it could influence how we respond to God's calling in our lives. Instead of remaining open and expectant, it could be that our hearts can begin to lean toward what feels safe and for us controllable. And that shift is often subtle, developing quietly and gradually as disappointment accumulates. I imagine that this is quite recognizable for a lot of us, perhaps in different stages of our life and also different in impact it has made in our life. You're hoping for something, perhaps you're even expecting something, and it doesn't happen. It is postponed, it is delayed, it is not happening at all, or it has changed so much that it isn't really what we expected. Perhaps it's just a small thing, but if it happens too often, and if it takes too long, then it just builds up. It starts causing you being unhappy, perhaps, until the bow snaps. In the book of Hosea, we encounter a people whose spiritual lives had grown dry and whose hearts had hardened. Over time, Israel sought security in sources that could not sustain them. They turned to political alliances and visible forms of strength, gradually placing their trust in what seemed dependable rather than in God's continual care. Each attempt to secure themselves through other means only increased their distance from God. It only took them further away from God. Their hope in Him was not lost, but it became subdued, buried beneath fear, uncertainty, and a longing for stability. But even in their weariness and wandering, God did not turn away. Instead, He met His people where they were, offering an invitation grounded in love rather than in patience. Hosea 10, verse 12, the second half of it says, "Break up your unplowed ground, for it is time to seek the Lord." This invitation called God's people to honesty and openness, urging them to bring the hardened areas of their hearts before Him and to trust in His faithful love. But in the same way, hope can become hidden in our own lives. Not because we stopped believing, but because repeated disappointment has taught us to be cautious. In 1952, long-distance swimmer Florence Chadwick attempted to swim the 26 miles from Catalina Island to the California coast. She was already the first woman to swim the English Channel in both directions. And she was tough. She was experienced and determined. Despite her experiences and support crew, thick fog obscured her view, and exhausted, she gave up after 15 hours. She later learned she had stopped less than a mile from shore. And reflecting on that moment, she said, if I could have seen the shore, I would have made it. Spiritually, we often face our own fog, exhaustion, discouragement, or uncertainty. Hope in God's promises is like the shoreline. We may not always see it, but it is still there. Trusting that God keeps his promises gives us strength to keep going, even when the way forward feels unclear. So Lent invites us to recognize where our hearts have become guarded or closed even, so that we may become aware of the hope God has already planted within us. Even when hope becomes obscured, Hosea shows that God has already planted something deeper within his people. And this hope is not based on Israel's faithfulness, but on God's unwavering love and commitment. Though the heart may grow dry or resistant, God's purpose remains unchanged. Throughout Hosea, God speaks not of distant possibilities, but of assured renewal grounded in his character. He works patiently, nurturing the hope he has already planted, even when it is not yet visible. Hidden hope is not lost hope. It may lie quiet beneath seasons of grief, of silence, or waiting. Yet God continues to attend to the deeper longings of the heart, even when outward expressions of faith seem fragile. Hosea reminds us that God promises healing and renewal. He describes a future in which his people will blossom like a lily and flourish again, sending out new shoots. This is not a sudden transformation, but steady growth under God's faithful care. What has long been dormant will come to life, not through human striving, but through God's enduring presence. And as we listen to these promises, we are invited to consider what hope God may have planted within us, even if it has remained unspoken or hidden for a long time. Where might God be quietly at work, nurturing new life that is not yet fully visible?